got in his whole career, what it means that Sean McVay MacGyvered a win after all the roster losses they had. Ramsey and Higbee day of. And for Arizona, mistakes on mistakes. The first hit of the season for Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. Picks and sacks, late game whiffs, time wasted. No spike in the last possession. Ramona Shelburne, around the horn to you. You're in Los Angeles. Was this more about the Rams statement or what the Cardinals meant to state but couldn't?
Look, my friend Bill Plaschke usually sits in this chair, so he would be giving you this tape.
Don't go full Plaschke at us. Okay. It's never good for anyone.
Going full Plaschke. Okay, we were going to write the Rams off as like, oh, are they even going to make the playoffs a couple weeks ago? They were so bad. But this was a huge win for them in the sense that I think losing all those guys right before the game, I think it actually took some of the pressure off them because they were in a position where if they didn't win this game, that now you really realistically are talking about not making the playoffs after going all in with the acquisition they made in season. It's also huge for Sean McVay, who's had a reputation of being great at game planning, great at scripting out plays, but when things don't go well, like when Matthew Stafford throws a pick six in the first couple of minutes of a game, doesn't adapt well. Well, he adapted really well in this game.
Jay Adonde, more about the Rams or the Cardinals?
I think it's more about the Rams, but unlike Ramona, I think it's more about Matthew Stafford than McVay. Because, again, the big question to me about this team had been, do you trust Stafford to outplay some combination of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, the likely opponents that they're going to see in the playoffs? Guess what? Now we've seen him not only outplay and beat Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, now we've seen him outplay and beat Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. That has to give you some confidence. There's still some trepidation. We saw what happened when they went and played against Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. But, hey, maybe you don't have to play him. Maybe you get on the other side of the bracket and somebody else takes out the Packers for you. So you can feel more confident about the Rams heading into the playoffs, more confident they'll be in the playoffs. We saw the upside of what Matthew Stafford can do, and more importantly, what he didn't do was he didn't make those critical mistakes in this game. So a lot to feel good about for the Rams.
You guys really worried the Rams were going to miss the playoffs? Look who's in the hunt. I mean, it's Washington, it's Carolina, it's Atlanta. Were you worried about that? Israel Gutierrez, I'll bring you in here. Last night, more about the Rams or about what the Cardinals couldn't do?
Well, I'm glad that you pointed out that Cooper was not actually open on that one touchdown because that was an amazing throw by Matthew Stafford. And it just goes to show you the type of game that he had against a defensive unit that is not very good against the run. The Arizona Cardinals, they're pretty good against the pass. And yet they didn't really have a big rush game. They did have a big game from Matthew Stafford. And, you know, if you want to say wins are not a quarterback stat, fine. That 0-20 shouldn't matter then, but it does. And this one really does because of the opponent. And, you know, say what you will about the Cardinals, you know, not playing well at home. I believe they're 3-3 at home, but it really isn't not about what they couldn't do, the Cardinals. It's just about what they didn't do, whether it be, you know, not going for, getting that 4th and 1 and sort of have nonchalancing the play to James Conner there, but also, you know, the fakes or the spike or not a spike there at the end with the miscommunication there. So if they just sort of, you know, tighten up a little bit, the Arizona Cardinals, I think they can still be right there, and you're looking at them as, you know, one of the best teams in the NFL. But, you know, the Rams really showed that after a little bit of a slump for Matthew Stafford, he still has this ability and can be, you know, top of the league type of quarterback.
In the first matchup, Arizona rolled L.A. L.A. gets the second one here, June Lee. What was the game about?
Yeah, I think Izzy points out about what the Cardinals didn't do, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that LA has a lot more experience in this situation than Arizona does. I mean, you look at the wide receiving core right now. Cooper Kupp has the triple crown for wide receivers in touchdowns, receptions, and receiving yards. And on top of that, you look at what Odell Beckham Jr. has done since he's gone to LA. In 3 games, he has 3 touchdowns. That's the same number of touchdowns that he had over 2020 and 2021 with Cleveland. There's that debate going on between whether or not Odell was the problem or Baker Mayfield was the problem. And Odell's starting to prove that, there might still be something there right now. And I think that's an important part for whether or not LA is going to be successful as they move forward, is that they have a lot of depth. And last night, after the fact that they lost a lot of guys, they were able to go out and prove that they had a lot on the table to give.
When you see a team like Arizona, I mean, they won games. Colt McCoy at quarterback this year. And they put together full, complete games, even during Kyler Murray's absence the last couple of weeks. The end of game hiccups, Ramona Shelburne, is that concerning?
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, they're 3-3 at home this year. So some of the argument is, they're not really that great at home, but that's where you should be great. And this was a chance for Arizona to really knock the Rams out of the division race, to really to make a statement here, and they just couldn't do it. And I thought that last play where Aaron Donald gets a sack in the first play of the game and the last play of the game, Kyler Murray's trying to scramble. I mean, that's got to be deflating for Arizona, especially when you know so much of that was self-inflicted.
Israel, last word.
You talk about the little details, right? How many people knew the rule that if you run out of bounds going backward like OBJ did there, that the clock keeps going? His own quarterback didn't know the rule because you saw his face when they cut to him. He was like, why did he just do that? And so those are the types of small details. Actually, the Arizonas were a little bit bigger, but they are not doing, or again, need to just kind of tighten up, and maybe if they sort of take care of those details toward the end of the regular season and into the playoffs, they should still be
It's
okay.
been tightening up in the standings.
Good
Three-way tie for the 1 seed now, 10-3, and you know it's the Cardinals, Buccaneers, and Green Bay, but Green Bay holds a tiebreaker. LA, Dallas, right behind them now with 9 wins. Israel, who would you most want to be with 4 games to go?
I would want to be the Green Bay Packers. Like, I don't think the number 1 seed means a lot to Tampa Bay. Obviously, they proved that last year. Probably not to the Cardinals either, because they're not playing particularly well at home. But it does for the Packers historically. And, you know, they're probably going to want to play for that. And not only do they have a pretty reasonably easy 4-game schedule down the stretch, Ravens and Browns probably the toughest of it. They're getting already a great top 5 defensive team is getting Jair Alexander back at cornerback. And he is, you know, top of the league type at his position. I'm just trying to avoid words all over the place.
Oh, boy,
and so you put that together with a defense that's already there. Like, yeah, I think the Packers would be peaking at just the right time.
June Lee.
I mean, Izzy, the Packers lost to Tom Brady at home in the playoffs last year. I think we have to go with what's inevitable. It's Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. I mean, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians have one of the best coach-quarterback partnerships in the league right now. It's a team that's been consistent over the course of the entire season. Mike Evans has been great. Godwin has been great. There's been a lot of offensive contributions from up and down the roster. And I think that this is a team where, you know, Tom Brady at 44 years old is having one of the best seasons of his career right now. It's hard to bet against him, especially when he has the experience and he's been more consistent on an annual basis, especially when he gets to the playoffs, than a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who has the toe injury. And that could be a really, really big factor as we move forward here into the playoffs.
Mona Shelburne.
Yeah, if I'm Green Bay, I want to sit Aaron Rodgers because that toe is getting worse, and it's so important for them to have home field, because I think of all the home fields, Lambeau Field is probably the best home field advantage. So you can't sit him because you got to win these last couple of games, and they actually have a much tougher schedule than Tampa Bay, who has New Orleans and a couple against Carolina. Like, Tampa Bay has an easier schedule down the stretch and a quarterback with, I think, all functioning toes.
And J.A. Donde.
And one thing, though, with the home field, though, is it might be at a disadvantage. Do you really want to send Aaron Rodgers out with a broken toe while it's like sub-freezing in Lambeau? So I think you'd rather have him maybe go play somewhere warm, play at Tampa. But I think you'd rather have Aaron Rodgers. You'd rather be the Green Bay Packers. The way he's playing, the ease that he's making it. He is doing this while hurt, and he's still showing why I think he's the best passer. Maybe not the best quarterback, the best passer. The throws he makes, the arm strength he has, I'm confident.
Aaron Rodgers, your MVP right now, J.A. Donde?
Maybe Brady.
After all you
Tom
just
Brady's
said.
having a-
Oh, Donde. I knew it. I had you sit up there. Oh, okay. One more story here, and this is really emerging now with urgency, whether COVID affects the NFL playoff race. And it's looking like how it will affect, because just in our taping today, we heard that the LA Rams have closed their facility for the day. And Odell Beckham Jr., we just praised for his heady play and his great play recently, on the positive list. Washington, Cleveland with significant cases. And this mirrors the NHL. Calgary Flames full pause and postpone games this week. In the NBA, the Bulls are in a complete stop. So I got to ask you, June Lee, with all these postponements in the NBA and NHL and the positive tests in the NFL sidelining players, does that mean protocols are working, or should they be revisited?
I'm just extremely tired of this entire situation right now because we look at what's been happening with the vaccines. I think people have kind of made their decision on whether or not they're going to get a vaccine or whether they're not. I'm hoping that the kind of approval of the antiviral pills that have been going around, that kind of helps push people forward towards having a kind of more safer world as we move forward here in kind of trying how to find out how we live with COVID. But we're in a situation where there is systemic failure, not just on the government's fault or the league's fault, but there's also failure on our part to try to live and deal with this virus and live for one another and trying to figure out how to best kind of accommodate everyone, given the factors of people having autoimmune diseases or being immunocompromised. Like, this is a failure on everyone's part, given what's happened with COVID over the course of the last 2 years, and it's really, really exhausting.
NBA, NHL postponing games this week. Ramona Shelburne. NFL's got a growing list now into the 4 dozen. Does that mean the protocol right now should be revisited, or is it working?
I think it's working, and I think some of this in the NBA at least is because there's been increased testing in the NBA since Thanksgiving. Before that, they stopped testing vaccinated players unless you were symptomatic. So a lot of the tests and a lot of the positive tests that are coming out now are players who maybe feel fine. I mean, you saw Jalen Ramsey, Tyler Higbee, they both put out statements or Instagram posts saying, "I feel fine." I don't even know if they would have been tested had there not been increased testing post Thanksgiving. The Lakers, though, I mean, this is now a situation. You already had LeBron had a false positive there. Now they canceled their practice because Taylor Horton-Tucker has been placed into the COVID protocols or the health and safety protocols. Their flight is delayed. This means that the protocols are working because they want to contain, if there's any kind of an outbreak, they want to contain it to one, maybe two players and not have a situation like we see in Chicago.
Yeah, Donde.
It's a reminder that we want to move on as a society, and these leagues want to play games as if everything's normal. What's going to determine this is when the virus determines that we're done with this and it's time to move on.
Yep.
And clearly that time isn't here. With the prevalence of the virus, with the variants out there, we have seen the leagues adjust their testing and their protocols. They're going to have to continue, in part because we're learning more data. And the leagues have done a good job of compiling data because they have some of the most scrutinized and most tested and most heavily vaccinated populations. So I would say it's working. Most importantly, you're not hearing about people getting hospitalized or dying in these league communities.
Andrew Gutierrez.
Yeah, to answer your question, Tony, the part of the protocol that proves to be working the most is requiring or, asking players to be vaccinated because there's less stress of a positive COVID test and what the result is going to be. The one thing that I would say, you have to just recognize that this isn't going away anytime soon and that there will be outbreaks during seasons, and we just want to minimize the effect of the virus, but also just minimize these. And so we learn as we go. None of this should be an answer should tell you, hey, things are going wrong. No, it should tell you, hey, we can adjust things and keep going in the right direction because we
are seeing an increase in postponements, though, and that's something that was a reality. We all thought it was a reality, but it is now emerging. The NBA schedule, the Christmas Day schedule, could that be in the balance?
Yeah.
The NHL schedule.
That's Lakers.
Taking a break right here. Buy or sell is next.
Around the Horn is presented by Truly Hard.
Bing bong! When Steph Curry said he could hit 16 threes in a game and break the record last week. Maybe he was getting lost in the moment. He says he realizes that now. Tonight, MSG, 1 from tying, 2 from breaking. He hasn't had a game without a 3 in 3 years. It's going to happen tonight if he plays. I don't think any of you knew this record or number before last week. So how important is this record? You think it's gotten to Curry in the past week, Jay?
Certainly he's been pressing. He's been taking what constitute for him bad shots and even rushing shots trying to get it. The record is important given the importance of the 3 in today's NBA, and it just feels appropriate that Steph Curry should get it, appropriate that he should break the record in Madison Square Garden where he really had his breakthrough first 50-point game, important chapter in the Steph Curry story.
Israel Gutierrez.
I think what's gotten to him is focusing on three-pointers, right? Because Steph, as a scorer, does more than just shoot threes, but now he wanted to hit that record, yada, yada. So, yeah, I think he's going to be glad to have it past him. The number itself hasn't mattered to me at all. What will matter is the final number he retires with, and we can say, man, is that even catchable for anybody going forward in the three-point shooting NBA? That's the number that's probably going to stick in people's memory.
We're watching on DVR. Go back. I'm pretty sure Israel Gutierrez just yada-yada'd over the best part. The record, yada yada. All right, Jude Lee, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if Steph Curry's three-point mark record is going to eventually become like Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak, something that's so unreachable and so unbreakable that we start to put it in kind of the pantheon of sports records. I mean, I think we should let the people decide about whether this record is important. It's $560 to get into Madison Square Garden tonight. I remember talking to my friends Max this weekend. He was praying that Steph Curry wouldn't hit three so he could watch it at MSG. Like, people are very, very excited to see.
Wait, hold on. Did you just source your friend? Your friend was excited and hopeful. That's the source here, Julie? Bing bong. All right, let's go. Ramona Shelburne, how about you?
Look, I think it's important just because Steph really changed the game. Like, he is symbolic. Like, this is symbolic of the way the game has changed because of him. I mean, you got high school basketball players shooting 35-footers because Steph Curry made it cool, where you used to get benched shooting that shot. It's also amazing, too. Ray Allen hit this record in his final game. He played 1,300 games to get to his final mark. Steph is on 788. That's unbelievable that he's got him this fast. He's 33 years old. This is going to be out.
Careful what you say, though. I mean, the game changes. You never would have thought somebody would be averaging 12 or 13 attempts a game, and it's happening. Buy or sell two. Could it be Kyrie Irving considering returning to play basketball with the Brooklyn Nets? His IG post had him putting basketball sneakers on. That has some excited. Vaccine mandates in New York haven't changed, but maybe the Nets, I mean, they could be softening their stance to let him play road games. That was always just a team idea. Momo, what are you hearing? What are you buying? What are you selling?
Well, usually his Instagram is a plug for a fashion brand he's endorsing. Or so, the fact that he's Instagramming basketball videos and basketball-themed things is a good sign. I don't think that anything's going to change in New York. What was interesting to me was this idea that the Nets may be changing their stance, that his teammates need him. And I think you can see from watching the Nets, they do miss him. I mean, there was a sense that James Harden made Kyrie Irving a luxury item. No, they need Kyrie Irving.
Shams Charania wrote it up in The Athletic. Maybe the Nets could be, maybe Irving could play road games, J.A. Do you believe there's anything there?
Well, let's look a little further down the road. And I was never convinced that we'd seen the last of Kyrie Irving for the season. Remember, the playoffs are a long way away, and a lot could change by then. Maybe the COVID numbers could decline, the vaccine mandate could go away, and maybe he'd be eligible to play, and the Nets would be in great shape. They've been playing pretty well without him, if you notice.
Has James Harden, though, Israel Gutierrez, do they need Kyrie Irving to make a run here?
The idea of him
them doing road games?
The idea of him playing road games, Tony, is something that has been talked about or discussed as, hey, maybe if he does, though, which he's getting paid for the road games, not the home games, then maybe it will sort of create this, yearning to play all the games. One thing I know about Kyrie Irving is he doesn't love the regular season, so maybe the beginning part you just wanted to use to maybe even research a little bit more and figure things out that he wanted to do. And so, yeah, it's possible that he's switching sides on the vaccine, but either way, it would be good for the league to have him back.
Can we get a breaking news on the bottom scroll here for ESPN? Israel Gutierrez reports Kyrie Irving doesn't love the regular season. All right, June Lee, what's Mac reporting?
It's almost the best case scenario for Kyrie in that, the Nets have gotten to a point where they really do need him. They can't win the championship without him. If he does get the vaccine, that looks better for him. And just given everything that's happened, there's a lot of situations where I think they're in a really good position where the Nets really do need Kyrie to win this season.
I can't believe you sourced your friend Mac thinking you're going to get points on the show. Mac's really looking forward to the game.
I'm the man of the people.
I'll have Mac on. The return of the Mac. All right, that's it for Lee. That's it for Adonde. Shelburne Gutierrez showdown in 2 minutes. Woo.